And welcome to the Go Earn It podcast. This is episode number 32. I am Shane Sparks, and with us today, this is a guy that has really done it all in the sport as an athlete, as a coach. This is Brandon Paulson, of course, 1996 Olympic silver medalist, 2001 silver medalist. You and I, Brandon, talked before we started recording. You have won a lot. You've lost some matches as well, but you have a great perspective, and I am especially excited to get in between your ears for a little bit and talk about your journey. It's great to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been a fun ride. Wrestling can give you a lot of experiences, and I'm, blessed to what's happened in my life, and I'm excited for what's coming up. And it's Olympics are going on, so I'm always excited for the Olympics. That's my thing, right? So that's what I've always been kind of always gearing up for. So now I get to just be a fan, and it's been awesome to watch so far, and I can't wait to finish it out.
When I used to do the interviews at Fargo, one of my favorite things to do was watch you coach. I can promise you this, Brandon. I've already got the paperwork in. In my next life, I am wrestling for Brandon Paulson. You are so authentic. I mean, you are into it, the ups and downs, but I just love the passion. I want to start with your hats. Love the fights. At Love the Fight. That is your Twitter handle. Where did that start?
Well, it's kind of it really started. Steve Frazier had this enjoy the battle when you're kind of in a match and you're hand fighting and it's getting hard type of deal. So that's where it kind of started for me, but it's really morphed into, a kind of a life type lesson for our kids. And I could go on for 20 minutes about love the fight, but really it's about the attitude you take towards everything. And really the hard things can be good, right? That just because it's hard doesn't mean it's bad. But love the fight means that when you're in a tough match and things aren't going your way, what's your attitude about that? Are you going to keep going? Or are you going to quit? When the referee is maybe not making calls your way, or your opponent is cheating, what are you going to do? Are you just going to keep going at it, or are you going to let that affect you? In practice, maybe it's a really hard practice, or maybe your partner isn't right, or whatever else is going wrong. What's your attitude towards that? With discipline, wrestling with discipline, weight discipline, as we'll maybe talk about later. you know, can you have the right attitude about that? Where you got Pat Smith who had weight discipline for 4 months this past year. Can you love the fight and actually like enjoy that part of it? Like, okay, I'm eating healthy, I'm doing the right things. So it's an attitude, and one of the biggest things is attitude going into a practice or into a job or whatever you're doing. And it's are you taking the right attitude towards it? Is it going to be hard? Great. It's going to be hard. I love it. Bring it on. I want more. I love when it's hard. You get through one of those practices where you're exhausted. I mean, that's the best, right? When you're just totally exhausted, you did something, right? So um there's a lot of facets to it. And I have about a 15 to 20-minute talk that we don't need to do the whole thing now, but man, it's when things get going rough. And coaching for me, coaching 6 and 7 year olds, man, I gotta love the fight. I tell you, it's it's not easy. Um, so yeah, there's different things in your job and your life, and so try to go by that motto. And I think the kids buy in, and hopefully it's helped them with their life and with wrestling.
You wrestled at Anoka High School, three-time Minnesota State champion. Did you place all 4 years?
Nope, my freshman year, I didn't place. I was a little small, but really, I made a pretty big jump, like my freshman to sophomore year. I was always okay, and I was always never the best, but I wrestled a lot. Especially I didn't wrestle a lot when I was a youth, but when I got to high school, when I really decided this is what I wanted to do, and really, for me, it was the Olympic dream. It was like 1984. I that was like my focus of, okay, I want to make the Olympic team. And then once you hit puberty, things kind of change, right? So I decided, this is I love wrestling. And so I made a pretty big jump during that time with, more training, more competitions, and whatnot. And I made a pretty big jump during that year. So, but yeah, high school was great. For me, I always focused on the international styles. I never wrestled a folk style match out of the season. It was either freestyle or Greco. I know you're a big folk style guy, so there's no, it's okay. I still like folk style. I like all three styles, but it's just my focus was always the international styles and specifically Greco once I got to about 10th grade. But I loved the off season and during season was fun because you have a team. So
And during that time, Brandon, like you said, you're doing a lot of wrestling. And again, you can look at this from so many different perspectives as an athlete, now as a coach, as a parent. And I know it's probably different for everybody, but what's kind of your general thought process on kids when they compete? How often?
yeah, I think right now youth compete too much. And I run a club. I run a wrestling club, and it's my job. It's my full-time job. So I see kids develop, and kids can get good by wrestling a lot, but it's like they're wrestling or by wrestling a lot of competitions, but really they're getting good at youth wrestling, which is different than high school wrestling. It's like I would rather have kids develop and learn technique and really learn their own body and their own athleticism, body awareness first, and then wrestle more once you get into high school. After you hit puberty, okay, now let's pick up your matches. But before that, it's like I still want you to wrestle because you know what? Competing is fun, right? Going to a tournament as a kid, you're hanging out with your buddies, you're running around. That's fun. It's just you don't need to do it Saturday, Sunday every weekend, through the winter or whatever. It's like I'm really into development and wrestling more later than wrestling earlier. And but once you get to high school, it's like competing is fun too. And I think that's a good time to learn how to compete and get better. So and that's kind of what I did, and that's what we try to stress to our kids. Now, parents don't always listen, we try, but the thing is, it's hard for them because sometimes you see results as youth kids, they come up and they're still pretty good, but it's just I've seen too many kids that have competed too much when they're young, and then there's like a plateau point. I'd rather them just keep going, So, um, training though, to be honest, I've kids training. I haven't seen kids burn out from just coming to practice. Like, and for us at Pinnacle, that's a club, Jared Lawrence and I run. We want them to be accountable, but we also want them to have fun. And the more they come, the more fun they have, So we do want them to develop as wrestlers. It's just, competition wise, we'd rather see it a little bit later. And then once you get into high school, man, let's compete. Let's have some fun.
What year did you start Pinnacle?
So Jared started it before me. He was still training. So it might have been like 2006 or seven, but there's a time when I kind of was helping him train. So I was done with my career. I was actually coaching Jake Deichler. Um, but he was still wrestling freestyle and we would converse. So I'd watch his matches, review his matches a little bit, came in with him a few times. And he's like, well, I got this kids thing I'm starting. I've been doing on Sundays, and then I think I'm going to start like a preseason next year. And he'd have it at like Augsburg or University of Minnesota. And I still remember it was after Deichler made the Olympic team. Was fortunate enough to be able to go to Olympics and coach them. And it was like that winter, I was actually in Mexico. I was looking over the ocean, and I was like, man, coaching is my passion. That's something I want to do for a living. And Jared had said, hey, if there's any time you want to start something, let me know. So I got back and I gave him a call, and we kind of, if we're going to do this, let's really do it. And that next year we got our own facility in like 2000. So it was 2009, fall of 2009. We got our own facility, and it kind of just exploded from there. So
Well, the sport is better for it, no doubt about it. I want to ask you, going back to your high school, you won the 3 state titles. As I mentioned, what is your favorite high school state championship memory?
giving a high five to my dad. Um, my dad was always my coach, always was in my corner. He eventually, even when I was a senior level, he was in my corner, except when I had to kick him out because he got too emotionally involved, as dads do. I kind of realized. But, after our matches, that was kind of our tradition, and I'd win a state title, and give him a high five, or junior national title, and I'd give him a high five. And I would say that was probably my favorite moment. My sophomore year, we won the team state and individual state. So as a wrestling thing happening, I would say that was, because winning team is always awesome, and to back it up with the individual was awesome as well. So, but experiences with your family or your coaches is always going to be something you remember, right?
What is it about Greco-Roman wrestling that just stuck to you?
Well, I love it. It's a legalized hand fight, and you get to throw people around. So that's the best thing about it. But for me, even growing up, I had an underhook position that was really good at. So when I was 9, 10 years old, I started throwing a hip toss, and that was kind of what I did my whole career. So I had an underhook, and it felt comfortable. And then, starting, I would say ninth grade, I started eighth, ninth grade, I started to get better at Greco, and really 10th grade, I was like, this is what I really like. And so then I had to, it's not easy to always find training partners, but I had to find training partners, and I would do whatever I had to do to train and go to the Olympic Training Center, or whatever I needed to do. But it was kind of what I liked, and I don't, I think just it felt more comfortable to me, even during that time. For me, I started wrestling when I was 6 years old. I didn't wrestle folk style until I was in junior high, until I was seventh grade. So it was all freestyle
Really?
and Greco.
No
Yeah,
kidding.
yeah. So my season was the beginning of January until Northern Plains in the middle of June, until like my cadet level year, like eighth grade, or seventh grade, I started wrestling on the folk style, whatever, middle school team, and that was really my first folk style that I wrestled. So freestyle and Greco have always been more comfortable for me, and so it's what I've liked. So it's kind of how it started.
Do you remember? I thought I read that when you were 10 years old is when you realized you want to be an Olympian. Do you remember that moment, that time? Take us back to, you know, what that would have been. You said mid 80s, maybe 84?
1984 Los Angeles Olympic Games is what did it for me. Like, those are my heroes. I just got goosebumps, and my hair is standing up right now. That when they walked in the opening ceremonies, I was like, I want to do that. I was like, oh my gosh, these guys are awesome. They're my heroes. And back then it was, as all sports. It was like Evander Holyfield. It was Carl Lewis, um, Jeff Blatnick, and Steve Frazier. But it was all sports, and Mary Lou Retton, Greg Louganis. So these guys, like, and I was like 10, and my memory's not great, but I remember that Olympic Games. And I was like, man, that's what I want to do. I want to walk in the opening ceremonies. I want to be Olympian. I want to be Olympic champion. So that was really always my goal, throughout wrestling. So something hit me there, and I had the Olympic bug after that. Like, not an Olympic bug, it was like the Pan Am game bug. I was always watching. I was trying to find it on TV. Back then you had to pay for like Olympic gold. I think not too many people paid for it, but we did, because I'd tape like all the volleyball games and watch it later, and so it was. I had the Olympic bug since I was 10, so I love it.
Were you at those games in LA or just watch them on TV?
No, no, just watching it on TV, and again, there's one channel back then. Eventually they had a couple channels, and then a couple more, but it was one channel. And but I would sit home during the day, and it was summer, and watch the Olympics, and it just struck me.
That picture over your right shoulder, is that 1980?
That's 1980. So, and I don't remember when it happened, but it was a miracle on ice, if you guys can see back
Yes.
there. But every time I've seen it since, right, I get goosebumps all the time. And I actually bid on it at some kind of auction for a charity, and I was like, oh my God, that's an awesome picture. Of the Olympics, kind of the whole USA versus Russia, or USSR at that time. And it was like, that's totally me right there. So Winter Olympics too. Like, I'm from Minnesota, so I don't do a lot of outdoor sports. In the winter, I'm inside. I'm in the wrestling room. But I know about a lot of outdoor sports. I've watched a lot of outdoor sports. So I'm into the Winter Olympics too. I love it.
Tell me, Brandon, about making the national team in Greco in high school.
Yeah, again, I think I was in 10th grade, and I remember I just got done with. I traveled I traveled for it was like 8 weeks straight of wrestling, and I'm like, and it was tournaments, training, and after I was done, I'm like, man, I need a break. And then I got a call from the national team director at the time. He'll come to me his name, but he's like, hey, I was small. He's like, we need a couple training partners here. I know you're young, but would you like to come out to New York and train with the world team, the senior world team? And I was a sophomore. I'm like, I'm not turning down that opportunity, right? So then I went there for like 2 weeks and trained with the senior national team. Dennis Hall was the closest in um, age to me. He was like 3 years older than me. So I was like 17, 16, 16. I think he was 19, so I didn't really have anybody to hang out with, but they all treated me pretty good. And then after that, that's kind of it started a little bit more where it's like, okay, Greco's my deal, and I'm going to do what I can to, I wasn't scared. Like I said, I've won a lot, but I've lost a lot. So, that year actually in the open division, I wrestled both styles. When I was a junior in high school, I wrestled freestyle and Greco in the senior level division that year, and they ended up going to world team trials and made the national team, which was pretty cool. Just you get more opportunities, right? The more I wrestled, the more opportunities I got for others to see me, to go out to Colorado, to train other places, and so yeah, that was fun. That was fun.
I
Good time.
mean, doing some research for this podcast, Brandon. I mean, the stuff that you won. I mean, you won everything. I mean, it was like, I mean, I'm scrolling down. It's like you won this, this, this. I mean, most people would be really proud and rightfully so to have one of those things on their resume, and you got a page of stuff. It's like, I mean, I remember you and I were talking before. I'm a couple years younger than you, but I remember in the early '90s, this kid from Minnesota, Brandon Paulson, and you were a dude. No doubt about it. Up during that time, Brandon, when you look at that time in high school, what were you most proud of as far as what you won up to that point? Any events stand out?
You know, Junior nationals is always a big deal to me, and cadet nationals. I mean, Um, so winning junior nationals was a huge deal. Making a world team was always what I wanted. I wanted to be the best in the world, right? That was always my goal. Be the best in the world, be an Olympian, be an Olympic champion. And eventually it was just being great, being my best, but I wanted to be the best in the world. So, making the world team was awesome. I made the 20 and under world team, I think, maybe when I was a junior in high school. They only had it every 2 years. So, that was cool. I got to experience going overseas. I didn't like traveling that much. I went to it was the old Czechoslovakia. So that was interesting, but it was cool making that team, but I didn't, I didn't medal or anything, but I would say junior nationals for me was always my goal. It was never really, to be honest, state title is what I wanted when I was wrestling during the season, but I was like, I want to win junior nationals. That was my goal every year. So, and now it's Fargo, so it's still that tournament is still important to me. We talked about before. You've seen me at Fargo, and I'm passionate because I was passionate about it when I was in high school. This was a long time ago now. That's over 30 years ago, and that was my goal. So I'm seeing these kids train for Fargo and train to be a junior national champ, a cadet national champ. Like I feel it. I feel it in my soul, like, God, I want these guys to do well, or I want them to do their best, and I want them to be happy. And so I get a little emotional out there with the kids, and I care about. So I'd say in high school that was probably my biggest goal and what I most was proud of.
Going to put you on the spot here. Tough question.
Uh-oh.
Coaching inside the Fargo Dome. What's one moment you would never trade?
Oh, wow. Coaching inside the Fargo Dome. Um, Coaching my son to his first Fargo All-American honor. Family, right? And my dad was in the corner with me. So there's nothing like that, right? Um, yeah, it was cool.
Man, that's what I love about these podcasts, Brandon. I get all you guys, and I'm emotional too. I mean, we love this sport. It changes you. You just said it. When you get to experience things like that with your family, I don't care who you are. If you don't get somewhat choked up, you just don't have a soul, right? I mean, this
Yes.
is this is cool. So that's what I love about these podcasts is hearing these kind of stories. I love this stuff. I mean, that is fantastic. I want to ask you, Brandon, again, because you've worn all these different hats, and that's why I think you're fascinating. I could talk to you for 3 days straight on this stuff. But you look at the success that you had growing up, and now here you are as a coach 30 years later. When you look back at yourself as you came up through the ranks, what did you do that you appreciate more now, understanding what it takes to be excellent?
You know, I changed a lot, right? When I was, young, I was a pretty good athlete. Um, I didn't always love the fight. I wasn't always coachable. And I think through my career, I wrestled till I was 30. And even though I won Olympic silver when I was 22, I think I was still at my best at 26 to 29 or 30. Um, I became more coachable. I learned to love the fight. I learned to be, in my mind, I achieved of what I call being great, where it's like I achieved my best. Like I did everything possible to achieve my goal. And that's really what I want my students to do and my kids, like whatever they're doing. It's like you got to do whatever is possible to be your best. And I think I did that. And I appreciate it now more than maybe I did then. That that's not easy, but I think my last 4 or 5 years, I learned to love the sport more. I learned how to coach during that time. I learned a lot of things, and so I appreciate that now. Those 4 to 5 years, and it was a great time in my life. And even though during those 5 years, I lost in the finals Olympic trials twice, and one of them was a 17-minute marathon. When I thought I was the best in the world, I thought I was going to win Olympic gold, but it was still a great time in my life, and I felt like I achieved, maybe not in medals, my ultimate, but I achieved what I believe was greatness. So
I watched that match today. I think it was what, 16 minutes, 54 seconds, I
16,
believe.
50. Yeah, and I think it took like 26 minutes, going out of bounds and the refs talking like, what are we gonna do now? And it was insane. It was insane.
When you look back at that 20 years later, what are the first couple of things that are top of mind?
I got hit in the head a lot that match. Dennis had a club that I mean, and I go back and watch it, and I think I got more like boxer knocked out than tired. Like I was tired, but I was still functioning until I think the last minute or so. I got clubbed once and I went down to my knee and I got back up and I was never the same. But no, I mean, the effort, and Dennis and I were training partners, we were friends. Um, Again, I thought I was at my best. I thought I was the best in the world. I had won maybe the toughest tournament I'd ever won in February of that year. It was Olympic qualifier, so I mean, it was a battle of two guys that both believed they were the best, and two guys that were confident. And you know, um, hats off to him. To be honest, he's in my mind still the greatest Greco-Roman wrestler to live. And it was fun doing battle with him, and I wish I'd have came out on top. But that's what happens in wrestling. I've
I
won a lot.
watched
I've lost a lot.
I watched an old Flow Wrestling video, I think from like 2007, with Dennis talking about this match, and he made the comment that after after a good amount of time, the referees basically said, we're not stopping this. Like, we're not getting involved in this. You two are going to decide this. And Dennis said in this interview, he goes, in my mind, I told myself to prepare for another hour. And then he said, I'm not sure what Brandon was thinking. So I want to ask you, at that time, what were you thinking? What was your mindset at that time?
Well, I had a few like So I had been in actually a match that was similar at the Olympic qualifier, 2-2, same passivities. And I knew at that time the criteria was who they thought was most aggressive, did the most attacks. So from 6 to 9 minutes, I was like, okay, I'm just going to try some little attacks, and if I can score, great. But I wanted to show as many attacks as I could because I thought they might decide at that time, and that because that's what they had done before, which I'm glad they did. I'm glad that they let us wrestle. And at 9, I was like, okay, I got to figure out a way to score. And really, I thought my advantage was in parterre. I had turned them um, twice, in the two matches, but I was like, I got to figure out a way to score on the feet. I got to get to his hips, or I got to get him going out of bounds. But I was thinking about trying to figure out a way to score more than I'm going an hour or however long I'm going. So I need to get to my underhook. I needed to, get to my positions. I needed to stop his club, and so those were things more the process of what I was going to do out there more than, okay, this is what length, right? So just a little different.
How often do you think about it?
Uh, not that often, I guess. I see him every so often, but I don't think about that match necessarily with Dennis. I had a lot of great times with Dennis. He actually was a mentor of mine. And we were like when we were in high school, I was a senior in high school. I left the high school season for 10 days to go to Sweden it was just me and him to wrestle Greco. Um, I used to go and train with him. The year he won the Worlds in '95, I was his training partner. So I basically spent most of the summer at his house training. And so in '96 Olympics, he's a weight above me. We both won silvers. We trained together we were training partners. So we had a lot of great experiences together. So I don't think about it every time I see him, but um, I haven't watched it in a long time. I think the first 3 months I probably watched it quite a few times, but um, I see it pop up every so often. I got the YouTube page, I think, saved just in case I need to humble myself.
Well, you look at that matchup with you and Dennis. I mean, you look at wrestling the last, at least for me, my opinion, the last 30 years. I'm not so sure there are two guys that are linked more than you and Dennis are. And I didn't know. I knew there was a great mutual respect. I didn't realize. I mean, I knew '96 you both won silver, and I've done a little, research and read that you guys had quite the relationship. But I mean, that is pretty wild. I mean, to
Yeah,
experience such great highs, and then all of a sudden you got to go against him.
yeah, yeah. And that was hard, going against him and knowing he was coming down in weight, and I really felt it was my weight, and he was, man, he was so strong. So yeah, and a great wrestler. So hats off to him. And we've had a great time and a great relationship still, and we're still friends and talk every so often. So it's still good.
What was it like to walk in the opening ceremonies in the Olympic Games in Atlanta here in the United States? Put that into
Well,
words.
I talked to you about LA, and again that was in the United States, right? So again, now I'm going to Atlanta, and I get to do it in the United States, which to me, some people are like, "Oh, you didn't get to go anywhere cool." I'm like, "Heck no, man! It's in your home's country. Like, there's nothing better." Like, so I actually remember, and I had to weigh in like 2 days later, um, and I had to cut a lot of weight, but it was like I'm not missing this, and I felt great the whole time. We had to wait in line for like 5 hours, but then you get to the stadium and you walk up like there's this ramp, and so it's kind of an opening in the stadium, and there's this ramp, and you walk up. I don't know how high it was, maybe 50, 60 feet, and I'm standing with Dave Zuniga, who was a Minnesota guy on the Olympic team with me, and you get to the top and you see the whole stadium, and it's like, holy crap. And you got everybody waving their flags and chanting USA because the USA team is coming out. You have 700 of the best United States athletes walking with you. I mean, that walk around the track, it's like nothing can duplicate it, right? It's different experience than you'll ever experience. And I you know I don't have a great memory, but I vividly remember a lot of the Olympics, and I remember that moment, and it'll live with me forever.
You get to meet any of the The quote unquote big hitters of the 96 Olympics?
Muhammad Ali, is he big?
Yeah.
So he was a flag bearer actually
Yes.
that year. Growing up in the 80s, uh, and minus whatever political, I don't care. But growing up in the 80s, he's Muhammad Ali. you know, there ain't nothing bigger, right? You got Muhammad Ali and you got Michael Jordan, but Muhammad Ali was so he lit the flame, but he also came into the dining hall and just like shook hands with everybody. So I mean, it it was amazing. He's like right by my table, shake hands with him, and I'm like, that was pretty amazing. I wish I would have got to, some of the tennis players. So I played tennis growing up. That was my second sport up until like as a sophomore. So I went to the tennis after I was done. I went to the tennis venue quite a bit, and I used to sit with like all the tennis, like the stars. And during that time, it was like Andre Agassi and Lindsay Davenport, um, Mary Jo Fernandez. So to me, these guys were people that I looked up. I mean, I just saw them on TV all the time because that was, the thing I used to watch because I love tennis too. So that was really cool for me. But some of the track stars I didn't get to meet. Track is like a something you might not go to because it's a little bit harder to watch live. So I did go quite a few events. I went to all events I could, volleyball and tennis and gymnastics. Met the gymnastics team, met the soccer team. Um, Gymnastics was always pretty cool for me too. Like Mary Lou Retton, watching her when I was young was inspiring to me. So like I wanted to go watch, and I knew a college teammate of mine, John Roethlisberger, was on the team, so I got to go watch one of those sessions, and I hung out with him actually closing ceremonies. We had never really met, so that was really cool. So yeah, I mean, I stayed there the full 2 weeks after. I did all the extracurricular, afterwards going to the White House, going to like Bush. I did everything I could, and I enjoyed. I mean, every experience I could, I did, and I'm glad I did it.
Is that poster over your left shoulder? Is that you at the Olympics?
Yeah, that's so they. I might have been pretty low on that. If you can you see it?
I can
I'm
see it.
not
I can
sure. Is
see it.
that that's that's
Oh, there we
above
go.
the hips, isn't it? That way. No, there we go. But that's a nice high dive from the Olympics, like my quarterfinal match, I think. Um, so yeah, I had that guy actually was from Belarus, and he had tech followed me earlier in February that year, but I got him that time.
What clicked for you in Atlanta?
Part of it was just my excitement over the Olympics and the. I talk about love the fight, and I don't even know if I love the fight, but my attitude the whole time, no matter what, was just positive, right? I was in the Olympic Games, so I was going to go out and I was going to give everything I had, and there's that you're in your home crowd, and I don't even know how many people, but like the stands were rumbling, and it was in like the convention center, and they put it up, but to me, it looked like this great big stadium, and it was like shaking when I was going out there, and they were so loud. Um, so it was an extra energy for me where I just, got on my opponents and I wrestled extremely hard. And even in the finals, like that first at a minute and a half, and I had a chance almost to score. And that guy had actually tech fouled me a couple years before the Junior World Finals. Um, so you know, I still had confidence in myself. I still went after it, and didn't come out on top, but um, I just I had that extra Olympic energy, and it felt awesome, and I wrestled my best. So
Standing on the podium, silver medal around your neck, stars and stripes being raised inside the venue. You're an Olympic silver medalist. You've been dreaming about that a long time, over a decade. How would you even try to put that into words?
yeah, it's hard, and I was still happy. Like some people think silver medal, you lost in the finals. I was still really happy. I wanted to hear a Star Spangled Banner, of course, but man, to see that flag go up, um, and for me, the flag is a big deal. It's our country has been through a lot to have that flag go up and just to have our 50 states and be independent. And so um, yeah, it's hard to explain, and to get something that you've wanted your whole life or since you were 10, had a goal. to even compete in the games, So um, it was a very special moment, and I'll never forget it.
This last March at the NCAAs, I did something with Coach Zadek and Coach Russell. And I want to ask you about this because your name came up, and you can set the story straight or refresh my memory, but I loved it. And it was something that I put back in my mind where I'm like, I'm going to ask Brandon about this. And it's something I'm going to
Uh-oh.
almost incorporate my own, crazy Shane Sparks language. But you didn't lose the gold. You won the silver medal. The story ring a bell?
Um,
Like the
yeah,
perspective on it was not to lose. You won the silver medal. Like a lot of times,
yeah,
silver medal is like, oh, I lost the gold medal match. And the
yeah,
perspective, changing that and saying, no, I won the silver or I won the bronze.
yeah. Joe was one of the guys that got me into Greco. So I don't know if you knew this, but
I did.
when when I was I it might have been 12-ish, somewhere around there. He moved to Minnesota. He was from Oregon, and he came to my club, and it was right after his accident. And most people know about his accident, but it might have been 2 years after. And he started doing an hour of Greco before every freestyle practice. So of course I was going to go to it. And so he kind of was one of the people responsible for getting me in there, into Greco. So I've always had a special relationship with him, and uh, he's such a great human being. He's one of my favorite human beings on earth, like a special guy, and he's always had the right attitude, right, about that type of thing. And and for me, like what I said, like some people are sad about the silver, but really, um, I remember winning that semifinal match, and I probably celebrated a little bit too much, but I knew I was a medalist, right? I won my semifinals. I didn't have to make weight the next day, but that's, I won my semifinals, so I know that I won a medal, and so I did celebrate a little bit when I won that semis, and and going through, I really, I'm proud of what I did, and I'm proud of winning a silver medal, and I didn't, necessarily lose a gold. So yeah, um, yeah, he's a special guy in my life.
Looking at your career, again, a lot of winning. A lot of winning. You've won a ton of big matches on the biggest stages, not only in the country, but in the world. And then you had some matches that didn't go your way. Some big matches that I'm sure were painful. Like how did you learn to navigate the disappointment and pain during your career?
It's losses are necessary sometimes, right? They're humbling, and I was always a competitive person. But as much as a competitive person, I love to compete. So it's kind of like, of course you want to win, but I want to go out and try to do the best I can to win. Right? That's my goal. I want to go out there and actually go against somebody, and if they're really good, then that's even more fun for me. So it was always like, okay, I lost, so now what do I got to do? I want to beat this guy next time. You know, um, and there's some losses that are harder than others, and losing Olympic trial finals twice is not easy. I had some college losses, um, that weren't my favorite. I think, in my career though, maybe one or two matches really that I have any regret, and that's not really to do with losing. That was just maybe, what I did out in the match or something like that. So I'm a competitor, and I love to go out and compete, and that's in wrestling or whatever I'm doing. And I try to still have a sane mind about it. Like if you lose, you lose. That person was better, and oh hey, well now I got to figure out what am I going to do next time, or hey, you know what, that was a lot of fun, you know. So you get older and you get a wife, and you play basketball with her, and the first time you play with her, you're a little too competitive, and you realize maybe I don't need to always be that competitive, you know. I learned that one pretty quick with her. I'm like, huh, they're gonna do it the same as me, I guess. But so, anyways, I love to compete. It's just fun, right? It's games, but it's some of them are serious, but you take your little time to get over it, and then you get over it because there's other things in life that are more important. So
What are a couple of those matches that you'd like to get back?
Well, I had one. I was coming back from injury, my junior year of college at the Big Tens. I lost in the semis, and I was in the Conci semis. I was actually wrestling the guy that I got injured against. It was Jeremy Hunter, and I had beat him earlier. And I went out there and I didn't give my best effort. I felt sorry for myself, you know, and I can still remember like I said, I lost a lot. Like I wrestled a lot, I lost a lot, but that one, it sticks with me because not even why. I mean, he might have beat me either way, whether whatever, but I lost because I felt sorry for myself. I mean, I didn't give my best effort. And that to me is not acceptable, right? That's not being a competitor. That's not spirit of the games to me, that type of thing. So that's something that stuck with me. And, that's something that you don't want to remember. And I don't have many regrets. So, my matches at the Olympic trials, it's like I gave everything I had. Do they hurt? Sure. But it doesn't like, doesn't, bug me as much as something where I had a match where I could have gave more effort and I didn't. But and I think, if people look back on my career and I talk to other people that watch me wrestle, and that was kind of I was never the strongest, fastest, most technical, but I competed and I fought. So if I didn't like in that match, then I wasn't being who I am. So that makes sense.
Absolutely. Jay Robinson, what was it like wrestling for him?
Jay, he was old timer, man. He worked us pretty hard, right? And he was a philosopher as well, and I think, to be honest, like when he came to Minnesota, he changed the whole culture of Minnesota wrestling. And for the better. It was like he started promoting, he was a great promoter of the sport. Like and he stood up for his guys, right? He wanted to promote a sport, get people into the arena, um, and do whatever he can with the administration to have them help you get into the arena. Um, but he was a great promoter, a great marketer, and really changed the trajectory of Minnesota wrestling. And he was a great coach, and I think he hired great people. And he won a couple of national titles under him. And him and I, like, we got along, but like he maybe wasn't my ideal coach. Whereas like Dan Chandler, I thought was maybe because I have some control issues sometimes. For me, I don't want somebody yelling at me. I want to push myself as hard as I possibly can. And that's what I kind of figured out early in my career was like, I can push myself harder than anybody else can push myself. Um, so we had an off and on relationship, but man, do I respect that guy. Man, did he do so much for people and people that you don't even know about, right? Not the top people. I'm talking people that you don't hear about that, he helped get through the program, or help get through school or whatever he could to help. And Joe Russell was one of them. You asked Joe about him, and it's like helped saved his life, really. Just because he kept believing in him. So, yeah, he was a program changer and one of a kind.
When you look at the coaches that you wrestled under,
You know,
and again, these are, I'm sure you've had a lot of these, so to put you in the corner and ask for one, but I'm just curious if one would stand out, most impactful conversation you ever had with a coach.
most impactful conversation I've ever had with a coach. Uh, I don't know. I've had a lot of great coaches, and Mark Schwab was a motivator. Marty Morgan always had the right thing to say. Dan Chandler was really a guy that uh, knew how to not push my buttons, but knew how to train me. Um, Steve Frazier with Enjoy the Battle. And So I don't know if I have one that's like an impactful conversation with a coach. I've had a ton of coaches that have had a big influence on me. Um, my high school coach, Coach Malcolm, he was a legend in Minnesota's time. And, my dad really brought me up. So I don't know if there's one conversation though that I remember that would stand out among the others.
Is there maybe a conversation on the flip side as far as you coaching that stands out with one of your athletes? Obviously, you mentioned before with Deichler in 08, he made that epic run in Vegas to make that Olympic team as what was he, 18?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I with all of my athletes, you try to talk to them and try to tell them similar things. With like Jake, it was really about confidence and making him believe in himself. And I think he did. Like he believed he was actually going to make the team. And it was something that we started when I started coaching him when he was a sophomore that, you're the best in the world. And it wasn't one conversation, it's every time he went out there, I said, "You're the best in the world," you know, or you're the best on the mat, or confidence, brings aggression or whatever. But it's all about his belief in himself. So it's not one conversation; it was 250 conversations that led up to that point, right? Um, so with him, he was the ultimate athlete, ultimate. He is coachable, he is athletic, he worked harder than anybody I've ever seen. I was able to push him harder than anybody else, and I could see it. And he was just, if he went to have concussion issues, man, he was a special kid. And he had belief in himself eventually. And going in to wrestle a two-time world medalist, Harry Lester. How many two-time world medalists do we have in Greco-Roman wrestling? You don't see it, right? And he beats him when he's 18. So and because he believed he could. So, and it's still now. Um, you want to hear a funny one? Good, ready
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
a real quick, a quick funny one. Um, so in the corner, I'm very, very positive. Like I don't know a reason to be really negative in the corner. Like, what is it going to help you? You hear dads get negative. What are you doing? Don't do that. And in the practice room, sometimes I make more corrections, but I'm very positive in the corner. So I have this kid. Um, it was Northern Plains, 14U. He comes to the corner and he's down 23-14. Comes to the corner and I'm like, "What the hell are you doing?" That's exactly what I said. He looks at me, turns around, he scores 21 straight points in Tech Falls, a kid. No joke, 34-23. That kid is now engaged to my daughter. It's Patrick McKee. So, um, yeah, that's how things turn around, right? I truly believe in the corner. That's the most negative I've ever been with somebody, and I think that's all I said to him. What the hell are you doing? So that was a good little tidbit for you. So
That is a
that's
fantastic
after
story,
Patrick.
Brandon, because I had it written down, but I've just kind of gotten lost in this conversation. But one of my questions is actually give me a good corner story. So that is exactly, I mean, that is I've always thought like I'd love to do like 100 different little podcasts, just little short stories per se. And one of those would be, stories from the corner. Like I bet everybody's got a couple that like that. That's a great
Yeah.
story. Like, what the hell are you doing? Goes out and scores a bunch of points and, it's a football score, puts a few touchdowns up in the second half to get it done. That is fantastic. You, Brandon, you're a distinguished member in the Hall of Fame. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, that was really cool and really surprising, because you don't think about yourself like that, right? So when I got the call, I was kind of amazed that that happened, and I was, honored, and what was awesome about it. So you get the call, and it was awesome and felt special, and then you go to this ceremony, and at the ceremony they also have the outstanding American, and the outstanding American when I was there was this guy who ran across an open field in Vietnam, a wrestler, and saved like 10 people, dragged them to the other side to a helicopter to get out, getting shot. And I mean, you talk about honored and blessed. It's like I'm I don't I feel nothing. This guy is a hero, right? So you're honored and blessed just to be in his presence. And to me, that was really one of the coolest things about the ceremony. It was just like you have all these other people and you're just honored to be a part of them and with them. And then see the people before you that were there. And it's like, my gosh, these guys are my heroes. And so that was that was an amazing weekend, and it was great for my family. And I had a lot of Pinnacle people there, so that was really cool. They came down as well, and so yeah, it's something I'll always remember.
You can finish this any way you want to. I
Uh-oh.
saw this once. It was like an ESPN article 20 some years ago, and it's always stuck in my mind. I like the article. It was a guy talking about what he believes. And he said, I believe, and he'd fill in the blank. I believe he had a list of about 100 of them. You got one or two things. How would you finish that as Brandon Paulson? I believe. What do you believe?
What do I believe? Um, I believe in having unrealistic goals and doing everything possible to reach for those goals. Um, I believe in trying to achieve greatness in anything you do, which means doing everything possible to be the best you can at whatever you're doing in whatever sport. Um, I believe in love and the fight, baby, is the attitude you take towards life that will change your life. If you take a positive attitude towards life, um, you'll have a positive life. And of course, I believe in my God, the Father Almighty, and love my family, and that's what I want to be known as a God fearing, family loving person that has a passion for competition, wrestling, gymnastics, and of course the Olympics and the US of A, baby.
That is great. Couple more for you. Two more. Okay.
Okay.
We're getting late, but I could do this for, if somebody said right now, can you and Brandy go another 3 days? I'd say I can easily, it's kind of like with you and Dennis. I got my mind program like, oh yeah, I can tire him out. I
About an
can tire
hour.
Brandon out. With the ups and downs in your career, and your career is it's fascinating to me because it gave you a little bit of everything. But what would you say? Call this the Go Earn It podcast. In your career, what was your Go Earn It moment? I mean, when did you have to find and learn something about yourself that you maybe didn't know you had? At any age.
Go earn it moment. To be honest, like at Olympic trials, and I would say this is just like a one specific moment. Like when going into the Olympic trials in 1996, I had a guy that was a former world medalist, silver medalist in the world. He took fourth in the prior Olympics. He had beaten me. I had never scored a point on him.
And
He
who
had
was
beat me
that?
5 times. Sean Sheldon.
Okay.
And going into that match, like 5 weeks before, I tore cartilage in my ribs. So basically separated my ribs. Not really good for wrestling. And I had to stay off the mat for like 3 out of those 4 to 5 weeks. And but I went into the match 100% confident that I was going to win because in my mind I was going to make this Olympic team. I was going to achieve my goal. I believed I was the best, and I had to, so the Olympic trials were actually in a high school at that time for Greco, and it was about 110 degrees in there because it was in California. And I just remember digging deep and doing whatever I had to do to win against a guy that nobody expected me to. Um, so and win 2 out of 3, but it was more of a change in my belief of I really believed in myself and I had to go show.
If you had to take a trip, final question for you. I always like this question. If you had
Right.
to take a car ride from Minnesota to Southern Florida, you're in a car with three other people, dead or alive, that you've never met. 3 people, dead or alive, that you've never met. Who is
Dead or
Brandon
alive, I've
Paulson
never met.
picking?
Well, first, I mean, I'll answer your question after, but first, if I'm in a car ride, I want to be in there with somebody that doesn't talk. And I don't want to talk. I want to listen to my music and go on my car ride.
What do you listen to, Brandon? What are your favorite musical artists?
Oh, well, I got a playlist that's called USA, USA, USA. It's like it's country, basic, mostly country, where I have like, all the 2000s country, patriotic country and that type of thing. You get some Toby Keith in there, but then you got to throw some Rocky in there, of course. And the song, a song from Miracle on Ice is in there. The song from the opening Star Spangled Banner and the song that played at the '96 Olympics, that was like the theme song, that's in there too. So people don't already get that. But so anyways, so first, if the people that know me and are listening to this, they're like, Brandon doesn't talk in a car, right? Everybody else will do it. But so somebody I've never met, 3 people that I've never talked to. It'd probably have to be some historic people, Jesus Christ, of course. I mean, he's the obvious choice. And after that, maybe a relative that came over here, what it was like coming to America when they came, and I don't even know their name, to be honest. That would be a great grandpa or grandma, and how they got to America and how that all happened. I'd say that was maybe number 2. Um, Number 3, let's see who I don't know. That would be tough. Oh, uh, I would say probably a sports guy from back in the day, somebody like, I met Muhammad Ali but never talked to him, or, guys I looked up to. I looked up to Michael Jordan, or, I don't know if I have one. I'd say maybe a Muhammad Ali, and really he has, a different perspective on life, which is always good, even if they don't have the same perspective on life as you. I think that's important for us in this world to learn from somebody new. So he's just from spitballing, throwing somebody out there, but he was kind of one of the guys that I looked at when I was young. So
Matt Side Wayans, yes or no?
oh, that's a tough one.
I went for a lateral drop in the final seconds with nothing to lose here, Brandon.
Wow. Matt Side Wayans, there's some very positives to it. There's some very negatives, like what just happened today, that would happen more often. You get in the Olympics and all of a sudden now you don't have a match, right? That's the negative. But I would love to get cutting weight away from it. I think college, it would be great if possible that they could do it, because they're weighing in every week, right? Um, if we could get cutting weight out of wrestling, I'm 100% for it. So do I have to give you a yes or a no? Let's go with yes. Let's do it.
I lied. I got one more. I got to ask you this. I promise is the last question.
Okay.
You in your prime in college. Patrick McKee, your future son-in-law, he's in his prime in college. Are you getting away? Is he turning you? How does that match go?
Oh, we're wrestling folk style?
Wrestling
I'm
folk style.
probably hip toss folk style. I ain't letting it go to the second period. I'm hip tossing him and pinning him, man. I'm not letting him on top. He had a pretty nasty half. And like I didn't like bottom. Like again, I didn't wrestle folk style in 7th grade. Like I'm just gonna get my underhook, hip toss him, and he's over. He's gonna push into me for sure. When I get my underhook, he's gonna push in just because that's how he does. And we're meeting first round, right? Okay, just making
there you
sure.
go. Right off the scale, right?
Right off the scale, and not in wrestlebacks. I didn't want to meet him there.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Man, Brandon, this has been an absolute blast. I mean, this has been a lot of fun. I've always admired you and what you do, what you stand for in this sport is better because of guys like you and the way that you lead. And this has been awesome. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Shane, and love your energy and keep it going and keep growing wrestling, baby. Go USA.